grew up in town, I didn't know the history of it. But I did hear about a B-25 bomber that hit the Empire State Building. I was like, what's this all about? So, on July 28th of 1945, B-25 was going from the Bedford Army base, which is now Hanscom. It was a really foggy day, and they were trying to land outside Newark Airport, and got disoriented in fog, and this B-25 ended up hitting the Empire State Building. So I started investigating that. I was like, oh, what's going on with this? But I'd seen a news clip on it. Yeah, it was a big story, right? So basically, one engine shot to the south side of the building, and the impact, the engine came through the next block at downtown New York. Started a big fire in a penthouse art studio, and one of the engines went right down the elevator shaft in the Empire State Building, and also sheared off one of the elevators that was full of that had some people in it. So pretty devastating hit. And with that particular crash, 14 people were killed. Smith, who was the pilot, two other were aboard the bomber, and 11 people in the building. So that was basically the fatalities there. There was an elevator operator named Betty Lou Oliver, who was injured when the cables supporting the elevator just got sheared off, but she actually survived the fall from the 75 stories. And this is what a B-25 looks like. So a little different than the B-17. And this was just a picture about what the Bedford Air Base looked like before it was named Hanscom Air Force Base. Little news clip on it: 14 killed as bomber hits Empire State Building. You see the big hole in the building, and a few of the firefighters going through the wreckage. And you can see here, this is where the plane went in, on the 79th floor. So you can imagine that was quite an elevator ride down to survive that situation. 900 feet to the street, and it's kind of a funny perspective, but basically you can see where the wing went on both sides of the main fuselage going through. But this is the photo that really kind of blows away. You got the reporters like right there on the ledge, right where the building's wide open. And so, this is the kind of a more bigger blow up of the hole in the firefighters in the newspaper. This is the actual picture. And you can see that the workers were taking axes and stuff and breaking up pieces of the plane and trying to get it out of the Empire State Building. And this is just a graphic of basically what happened with the plane. You can see where the one engine went down the elevator shaft, the other one went out the backside. And this was in the basement of the elevator shaft where the engine ended up. And this was the Mary Lou Oliver after she got out of the hospital. She was back in the building, ready to start work in a few weeks. So fashionable road trip. So in February 1943, the airport was renamed the Lawrence Hanscom Field in honor of a Massachusetts-born pilot and aviation enthusiast he was a reporter for the Worcester Telegram and Gazette. And he was advocating for establishment of the airport at Bedford, so they ended up naming it after him. He was posthumously honored at after this accident that he was in. So just a little history on Hanscom. So that brings me to the B17 crash in North Reading. So when I was looking at this crash of the Empire State Building, this database comes up. It's the AAIR database, and has all these airplane crashes that go way back to, you can go by zip code, by state. So I was looking in, I just happened to come across Massachusetts, and I saw this B17 in North Reading. I was like, oh, what's this all about? So started digging into that. And before I go into the whole history behind that, I'd just like to give you a little bit about the B-17, so you know what's going on with that. So this is what a B-17 looks like. This is like a very basic version. Can take on, I think it's about eight bombs altogether. So not a huge payload, but this is kind of like an up close, and you see like during the war they would put how many bombs they dropped, and they had hit targets and that sort of thing. I like this one because the captain has the same last name as I did, so and they highlight that. This was a later version of the B-17. And this is what it looks like in the cockpit. So even for 1939, 1940, a lot of stuff going on there. And this is just an example of one of the many different leather jackets they wore. One of the things that was really startling is how cold it is when you're flying one of these things. I mean, there's 0 degrees below zero, so they barely stayed warm even with these stuff. And this gives you some idea how bundled up they were when you're flying at 20,000 feet. This would be your typical crew on a B-17 was 10. Like this is a crew of 10, and this was the exact same same number that was in the North Reading crash. It was 10. It was a crew of 10. And this would be a typical this was the one thing that had as far as how to get out of how to get out of the plane if it was going down. So you can see it was kind of tricky for the gunners to get out, especially the one in the belly of the plane. But that would be the pilots had to come down through the middle of the plane. And this is a pretty tough exit here if you're in the front. So. This is where the radio operator would sit, and this kind of gives you an idea inside the plane. You can see where the gun turret is in the middle. I thought I'd play this quick little YouTube clip since we have good internet here. Gives you a little history of the B-17. that was the whole payload building, all 6 columns. So that's just a little action so you get an idea what the plane looks like. So a little bit about the B17. So the initial B17 did not get off, the whole project with Boeing did not get off to a great start. They made a huge bet on the aircraft trying to sell it to the military. And there was a crash that killed a famous test pilot. So the project got pushed down and they kind of got passed over on the initial kind of pitch to the Army and the Air Force. So, but they kept in the running and they kept making continual improvements after it was the initial bid was lost for the plane. When it finally looked like the U.S. was going to be potentially drawn into the war, they sold some limited production runs to the military to get the project up there. And basically, when the war was declared, they were the only 4-engine bomber out there. And that's the name Flying Fortress. So they were they just held in there, and they finally got in the right position that they needed. So there were a couple of prototypes. There's like 15 of the original prototypes. They made 39 of the B17B, the first kind of real initial production run. The B17B is what crashed in North Reading, one of the first plane. You can see, once the war got going in production, by the time they got to the E version, it was 512, and the 17 and the F and G were the major production runs, 3,486. So a total of 12,000 planes. And a couple B17s about. So this is what the production of the B17B in the Boeing factory. There's a couple in the runway. Picture of flight of the B17B. And just a side and then so this just uses kind of what I talked about before. The just a few subtle differences between the original version and the B17B. If you have any questions on that, I can share the slides, but that's just some technical details. So, and this is the first one flew the first time in Seattle, June 27, 1939. They were built, so all the planes were, the 39 were all built in a single run. That's the picture I showed you in the factory. All 39 were delivered to the U.S. Army Air Corps between July 20th, 1939 and 1940. And they were kind of issued to different bombardment groups, and it was basically at Wright Field for tests. In November 1939, 7 of them flew from Langley Field to Brazil on a goodwill mission. And it was kind of to prove that the planes were worthy of flight and could basically fly to Brazil and back without any problems. So because they had so many initial problems with the plane, they really wanted to prove themselves. And the other thing that happened is many of the B-17s, because they were kind of a primitive run, were modernized in early 1940 and 41. We've got some big 50 caliber machine guns. And a B-17 was serving in the 41st Reconnaissance Squadron up in Newfoundland. That's where this one the one that crashed on North Reading came from. And let's see what else I have. So this was just I got this from the records on that aircraft site, and basically, this kind of gives you a list of some of the B-17Bs that what happened to them early on. And so basically, when you see WO, it means just written off, or a class 26, which means the aircraft was deemed to be non-flying anymore, like they could use it for parts or training on the ground. So the 8th one I saw here was the one scrapped in North Reading in October. They finally wrote it off in 1942, or did the final analysis on it. And that was the 37th plane of the production run. Just a couple stats on it. The engines were 1,200 horsepower for takeoff. Maximum speed was 292 miles an hour at 25,000 feet. Maximum range was 3,100 miles. It was a 103-foot wingspan. Total length was 67 feet, and the total height was 15 feet. So, 27,000-pound plane, empty. Could hold up to 46,000 pounds. And a maximum, 8 600-pound bombs. So that brings us to the kind of the crash. It kind of starts off where things happen. So the crew that was up that flew this plane through North Reading was up in Gander, Newfoundland. And one of the things about Gander is in the wintertime, the place just, there's nothing going on. It gets completely snowed over, feet and feet of snow. So the guys were pretty much up there like all winter, this crew was. And they wanted to use Gander because it was really close to all the action in Europe. So as far as having something in North America. And so that's where this, they started some operations up there, and I'll show you what this is Gander, Newfoundland, where the base is. It was. This was the airfield. And I found a bunch of patches from the Gander field and what some of the guys had on the jackets that were flying. This is one of them. This is some B-17Bs on the actual Gander tarmac. We called that, it was barely a tarmac back then. And this was the actual, the main unit, the 21st Expeditionary Recon that they were under, and they were actually part of the plane that crashed was part of the 429th Bomb Bombardment Squadron, which was, this is what their patch looked like. So some examples of it. So what was it? You have a question?
No, it's just
Okay. So the mission of the particular plane that crashed, one of the mysteries was, what was it doing? Like, why was it coming from Newfoundland, and why did it crash in North Reading, and what was its mission? Well, basically, there was when I first started researching it, there was a lot of talk about they were on a mission to do some submarine bombing or some type of thing off the coast of the U.S. And actually, what they really were doing is it was July by this time, they were dying to get out of Newfoundland to do anything except stay up there. So the first chance to do a mission, to do something, they were ready to get out of there. So basically, the idea was to fly from Gander down to just outside of Philadelphia to a base where they called the Johnsville Naval Air Development Center, which basically they were going to upgrade and retrofit the plane to modernize it, basically. So they had to get the crew to fly the plane down, and then they were going to stay there for a while until the plane was upgraded. And this is this was a little airstrip where they would do the planes could land here when they would do the upgrades and factory work. So as they were basically, this is the news clip, but, so on July 18th, 1942 is when the crash happened. Like 3:20 in the afternoon, kind of a foggy Saturday for July. I think someone had mentioned Gig Stevens. I think you did.
Good man.
Yeah. So he was a 16-year-old boy, lived up near the Red Hill Country Club, which is now the Hillview, if you go by. Anyone ever see the R and the H on the Hillview Country Club? So that's for the red. You said one chimney has the R on it, and the other chimney has the H on it. So when you drive by, you'll see Red Hill. So basically, if you can imagine this, the plane's coming from Route 28 over by like the 7-Eleven is coming down. And it's in distress because it's not flying right. He basically right outside the Hillview was going down the hill towards down that part of North Street, heading towards the high school. Saw basically a guy in the gun at the side of the plane was open up, and basically kind of trying to figure out what to do. Did they bail out? How did they get out? So he saw the plane crashing, and he was, I guess, one of the first ones to run over there and get to the crash site. So he did see one of the guys, and like I said, there's a total of 10 on the plane. So that was the initial news clip. And you can see the R. Even though it's a Hillview now, but it was the Red Hill Country Club. So this is a guy I ran into who just had he was having a wine tasting over his house, and we started talking about this in the time I was kind of researching the crash. And he says, "Oh, I can't believe you're asking me this." He goes, "The plane hit my house." So his chimney was, if you can see, the original chimney was rebuilt right here. So it took part of a little bit of the roof off and the chimney off. That was right on Oakdale Road. So there's a plaque on his house which marks the incident. But it was just a curious encounter. But got a lot of good information from him. So if you look at this map, the Hillview's up here, and then here's Oakdale Road where his house is right here. And the plane crashed somewhere in here in Schoolhouse Lane. This is, again, the high school parking lot. So pretty much right behind the high school. And this is going up Schoolhouse Lane. I'm sorry, not Schoolhouse Lane. Schoolhouse Lane is over there. I can't think of that. It's a street. Belmont Lane. So this is going up Belmont Lane towards the high school and turning left. So basically, like right in here is where the plane crashed. This is a picture. Kind of, I think the transcript did a story about it back in 1989. They had some old photos of people looking for wreckage and kind of stomping around the grounds to crash was. And yeah, this is just another map that I had of Belmont Lane at Schoolhouse. One of the things that was interesting is, did anyone recognize that it's been over by the high school or see those rocks? So they're almost like a tabletop. And I was reading one of the accident reports, and they said that the Red Cross had set up, they came through Oakdale Road and they had set up, food, and they used those rocks as like tables. Wow. That was kind of interesting. Like, okay, now it makes sense that, kind of identify the crash site based on where they were set up for the Red Cross. And I was able to get a hold of this accident report. The guy on Oakdale Road had actually shared it with me. And this video just goes, basically the reason the plane crashed was it was experiencing what they call flutter. And this guy does a better job of explaining it than me, so I'm just going to play a little video to get an idea.
Hello folks, I'm Rob Machado for AOPA Live. I'd like you to take a look at this video and tell me what's happening. Go ahead, take a look. Now, is that how glider pilots wave hi to each other in flight? Well, I don't think so. Take a look at this video. Is that airplane making these gyrations because Air Force pilots fly like this? Well, once again, the answer is no. What you're witnessing is something known as the continuous flutter of a control surface. And it turns out that control surfaces and the appendages to which they are connected can engage in a sort of mutually reinforced harmonic vibration, which you just observed as continuous flutter. Engineers can prevent this from happening by adding tension to the cables controlling those surfaces, or more commonly, by adding counterbalance weights to the movable surface themselves to dampen these oscillations. Now, what you see here are counterbalance weights for the ailerons, elevator, and rudder surfaces. As long as those weights are in place, you shouldn't experience flutter. Problems typically occur, however, when the control surface gains extra weight, as it can when it accumulates frost on the ground or ice in the air, or when water becomes trapped inside that control surface because of plugged drain holes on the underside of that surface. Keep in mind that control surface flutter is typically a high-speed phenomenon. And if you find your control surfaces vibrating at higher speeds, you'll definitely want to slow down to diminish or reduce this vibration, and upon landing, consult a qualified mechanic about the problem. But continuous flutter, relatively speaking, is not the worst type of flutter you could experience. There's another type, known as divergent flutter, and it is an extremely serious situation. Take a look at this video of a command sheet undergoing a high-speed flutter test. As the airplane is accelerated to very high speeds at and above VV, the test pilot gives a good slap to the control yoke with the palm of his hand and attempts to induce a vibration, thereby inducing flutter. The divergent flutter on the elevator happens so quickly in this video that I'll have to show it to you again in slow motion for you to actually see it. Inside the cockpit, the pilot experiences divergent flutter as extreme control surface vibration and typically a highly pitched sound. The moment the pilot feels the extreme vibration on the yoke, and this is very important to keep in mind, the moment he feels the extreme vibration on the yoke associated with divergent flutter, he immediately reduces power and pulls aft on the elevator to lower the control surface and decrease his airspeed. This is how he handles divergent flutter. But I want to make the point here that divergent flutter is not something you handle as much as it is something you avoid, because divergent flutter can lead to in-flight structural failure. So how do you avoid it?
So basically, that's what caused the accident, because the wing, part of the wing came off from the flutter. It could have been from the fog, where the moisture built up. It's a pretty primitive plane, so a lot of things could have gone wrong, but when they looked at the wreckage, and that was basically, it was flutter. It was the cause of the crash. One thing that was interesting is, I don't know if people know this, but there was a big military presence here when the plane did crash, because they were trying to secure the top secret cargo on the plane. They didn't want anyone to get in the wrong hands, and basically, they were concerned about this. Right, it's called a Norden bomb site, and so another picture of it. Here's a schematic. So this is a little further history. So after the crash, one of the guys I talked about, Gig Stevens, went on to have I think he was majorly impacted by this crash. He passed away in 2014 as a lifelong resident here in town. Graduated from North Reading Public School System, I think 2 years after the crash. He served in the war. He was involved in aviation, auto racing for your car enthusiasts here, and just it was just someone who was really moved by the accident and had a profound impact on his life. This is just, if you've been up on the common here, this is the tribute to the B17 bomber crew, with all the names. And if you look at, there was a memorial that they did, I want to say maybe like 20 years ago, where they had some of the family members come back to be honored. I think when they added this plaque to the memorial. And this was just a little map of where all the crew members were from. So they're pretty much all around the country back then with the war effort. Yeah, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas. And this was the actual pilot. Kelsey was his name. And just to kind of end the formal presentation, I just wanted to thank some of the people that helped me with the Historical Society. Tom Parker got me some information. The Flint Memorial Library had a lot of good information about the crash and newspaper articles, and Nancy Freddie actually helped me a lot too. So anyway, that's the B17 crash. So, anyway, any questions or things?
The former chief of police, this Gordon Berridge, used to be quite enthralled about this, and he would go up on that Tower Hill with a metal detector. And this is only up until about 20 years ago. He was chief of police at the time, and he actually could find different parts. So, but he actually found something that come off the engine, like the serial numbers, and was a plaque or something like that. So he was pretty well interested in it. So over the years, it's had a lot of attention in North Reading.
Yeah, I was always like, it'd be great. I always thought, one of the final chapter would be actually finding a piece of the wreckage, like,
Oh, yeah.
talking to some
Still
neighbors.
there.
Yeah. I know a few people live, over like on Oakdale there and behind, so, like might be a, as the soil turns or whatever, like there could be some wreckage up there. I know that they, when I did the presentation 5 years ago, someone mentioned that there is, I think it's up in New Hampshire, they have actually one of the gun turrets.
Okay.
Someone was able to, I think, quickly secure before the military rolled in, so.
Well, I'm glad to hear the true version. I heard there was an unofficial version of what happened. And not to cast any aspersions on the brave people who died, but the unofficial version was, I don't know if you served in the military. If you served in the military, I was in the Army at 17 years old, and we did a lot of things that this kid right here wouldn't think of doing. And I was in the Army driving a tank. But anyhow, we were told that they were assisted in sinking a German U-boat, and they helped the Canadians. And that when they landed for refuel in Nova Scotia, someone threw a case of champagne on board. Now these guys are all 20, 22 years old, the average age.
Oh yeah, they're all young.
And they started, whatever they do with champagne, I don't know for sure. But anyhow, someone got the idea to start shooting up water towers on the way back from Nova Scotia. And they were supposed to go to, they were gonna go to Washington to be debriefed. So I mean, this is all just, anyhow, we heard the story that they were coming across all these hills, and they were shooting up water towers, and therefore Tower Hill got a little too close to the bottom, and that was it. So I know that wasn't a true story.
I was reading where there was like a bombing mission, and it was kind of like it was early before things really got going with the war. It was kind of like this angry, like let's drop some bombs and like hit, a Russian or a German sub.
Yeah.
But that was different from this, this trip. It could have been maybe the same crew, but they were on a different trip.
Well, Paul Harvey says now you know the rest of the story.
Yeah.
Now I know the rest of the story.
But that was one of the things that, like, when I first, before I did the talk like 5 years ago, that was one of the things that was like on a bombing mission, on the East Coast somewhere, like down in New Jersey, going down to New Jersey or something like that. But this is strictly like a retrofit operation. They're just going to fly the plane down and get it retrofitted, get it modernized.
I used to take the fellow from Riot Store, the old man, and he was a World War I guy. And I used to take him in the parades on Memorial Day, whatever, in the antique cars. And he said when they were coming back from Europe, and on the battleships, whatever it was, they were on troop ships, he says they had so much surplus military equipment, they would just dump it overboard. And he says off the coast of New Jersey, there are thousands and thousands of canisters with poison gas in it. And we just dumped them off. He said, "Well, nobody wanted it on the shore, so dump it in the ocean." He says, "Now that's over 100 years ago." So, well, but if you see a big fish kill,
Yeah.
one of them let loose.
Yeah,
But, you know, these are people that actually lived it. I mean, I'm sure when he told me that, they did that.
Oh, yeah, no, that's probably commonplace, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for coming.
Thank you. You're a good man.
You guys, no more mysteries on the B-17 then.